A lot of people have been asking me to do a recruiting update as things heat up, so let's do it. We have big targets coming for the Red River rivalry game, so let's catch up with the prospects. I asked recruiting specialist Justin Wells from Inside Texas to stop by and catch us up to speed real quick. Make sure to visit InsideTexas.com for always up-to-date, in-depth Texas recruiting coverage. It's a must-have for the hardcore fan. And as always, don't forget to pick up your new hat for the new season at Last Stand Hats. Use promo code TexasHomer, all caps, for 10% off your purchase at laststandhats.com. Texas is currently at number 2 nationally in recruiting, but will we be able to keep up the momentum? Without further ado, let's get into it. Justin, excited to have you on again, brother, and this is not your first rodeo, no need for introductions, so we can get right into it. First things first, how many spots do we have left in this class? And has COVID rules altered the scholarship limits? I'm confused on how many spots we have left.
Well, I would love to clear that up for you, but I don't think Steve Sarkisian and his staff have it cleared up. So I don't know how much I can clear that up as well. This is a unique year. And with COVID and with the free eligibility and things of that sort, the number is going to expand. You know, they just passed, a thing through the NCAA where they're not looking at scholarship limits for this signing class. And so originally, I believe Sark told us that Big 12 media days, maybe even during media availability, that they were looking at 27, 28 spots. And I believe Brennan makes 22 or 23 in this class. So realistically, you're looking at 5 or 6 spots, I think. I think those are 5 or 6 spots. And when you're talking about guys like Evan Stewart, Devon Campbell, Denver Harris, Cam Dewberry, the guys of that sort, those are probably your last guys on the board to fill in those spots. It feels like the floor has been set for the class of 2022. And now they're just slowly rising the ceiling with each guy. And so to give you the best answer I can give you is I'm not sure what the number is going to be. Sark told us 27 or 28 a little while back. I think there's probably 5 or 6 spots left in this class, and let those guys figure out how to make the numbers work, because Sark has already shown a penchant for turning over the bottom of the roster. And I guarantee you when January comes around, he's going to continue to do that.
Yeah, we have the floor set with solid 3 and 4 stars. We just have to add those 5 stars, those top guys. But also the big recruiters like Alabama have smaller class sizes right now. They haven't stocked up, and we're pretty stocked up. So do you think Texas can maintain a top 3 class even when Georgia, Bama, Clemson start to sign their guys?
I absolutely think they can maintain a top 3 class as long as they continue to do it on the field. That, to me, has been the biggest separator from this class of 2022 since they started camp in August. It's the product they're putting on the field. If you talk to any recruits, they'll tell you, I went and saw Jonte Cook, the dynamic wide receiver out of DeSoto 2023, who's going to be in Austin on October 16th. I asked him, what's it like watching the Texas offense? And he flat out said, you put 70 points on anybody, that's impressive. And it gets their attention. Armani Winfield was also saying the same thing, like 70 points is legit. That gets your attention. And I think they can absolutely finish strong because the guys they're still in on are, like you said, they're 5 stars, the high 4 stars. You're truly elite guys. And so if they just finish the way that they're trending now, I think you can have a top 3 class, because they're going to get a few of these guys, whether it's an Evan Stewart or a Devon Campbell or a Denver Harris. Texas is going to land a few of these guys just based off what they're doing right now. If they finish strong throughout the season, if this team winds up in the Big 12 championship, I think it's a guarantee they have a top 3 class, simply because, like you said, they've got the floor built already. It just goes to show all they'll have to do is add a few of those elite guys that they've been building relationships with for the last year or so, and that would close out, which would be an incredible first full class for Steve Sarkisian.
And let's talk about the big commit in Brennan Thompson. What was the story of that successful recruitment for those that don't know, and what does Brennan bring to the 40?
Speed. Brennan Thompson is flat out God-given speed. You can coach it, but you're definitely born with it. And Brennan Thompson brings that to this team. One of the things I believe Sark and the staff recognized after the first few practices in spring was the lack of speed, especially in the skill positions at wide receiver. And I think that's why they made their move for Xavier Worthy. I think that's why they made their move for Keelan Robinson, to bring both of those guys over, just to inject instant speed. Brennan Thompson is going to do that. He's just nasty fast. 10.38, 100-meter. That was on an injured foot. If this guy's healthy, he's looking at 10.1, 10.2s this coming spring in track and field. Brennan's recruitment was pretty simple. Texas had been in it from the start. Once Sark and the staff took over, they obviously took over that recruitment. Jeff Banks was critical here. This was a Jeff Banks specialty. This is it when Coach Banks finds a guy he really wants. Look out, rest of the team, rest of the programs, because he gets it done. And that's exactly what he did. He closed this one real well. They knocked it out with the few trips that he took. I believe he came in late June, right before the dead period came. He brought all of his family, his grandparents. They loved it. His family was really, really pro Texas after that initial visit. Then he took the official visit during the Rice game, and that couldn't have gone any better. Give the Texas staff and the recruiting staff a ton of credit for setting that up, that official visit up. It's so much more than just inviting a kid and his family and telling him about the virtues of the University of Texas. They did so many other things, bringing Jordan Shipley along so Brennan and him could talk about hunting, because both are outdoorsmen, both love deer hunting, but both love doing that. That to me was huge. I got the chance to meet Bonnie Thompson, Brennan's mother, and I've got to speak to her on a few occasions. Absolutely wonderful person. She was behind Brennan 100%. And you could always tell, I think she kind of liked Texas. There was something about Texas, the family atmosphere, the authenticity from the staff and the players that reached out. It was just so many things that added up, and it looked like Texas was going to be the best avenue. Clemson offered, Alabama offered, A&M made a run at him. But at the end of the day, Brennan, who grew up a Texas fan, we got to see some of those old pictures. I love the old pictures when they're kids and they're wearing the jerseys and the helmets and throwing up the hook 'em. That's what Brennan Thompson was. He grew up a Texas fan, and more often than not, that translates to when they're older and they get to make this big decision. And it just so happened he's the type of receiver this offense absolutely desires. They want to find mismatches in every level, 3 or 4 receivers at a time if possible. And Brennan Thompson is a piece of that puzzle that allows Sark to run this offense similar to how he did in Alabama last year.
And we're headed to Red River, man, and we have a solid list of visiting recruits stopping by. And let's just cover 22 kids, since 23 kids are still a little bit off in the distance. Let's talk the first receiver, number 1 receiver in the class, and Evan Stewart. And Texas is still after him super hard, even after the decommit. And also, Evan announced that he would sit out his senior season to train. So just want to check in with Evan. What's the update with Evan currently?
Evan Stewart remains one of the most polarizing recruitments in the class of 2022 nationally. This is a guy that's an immediate impact player. We talked earlier about Brennan Thompson and that God-given speed. Well, the Lord did not neglect Evan Stewart in that regard either. This is a kid who can absolutely fly. He is elite of elite. 6 foot, about 175, 180 pounds, does a little bit of everything, unguardable, literally. And he knows it. He knows this, and that gives him some leverage. And so Florida is a major factor in this recruitment. Alabama is a major factor in this recruitment. And Texas is a major factor. Like you said earlier, he committed to Texas, and then I think it was about a month or so later, decommitted because he realized it was a little too soon. He made that jump, pulled that trigger a little too early. And it's very rare that a player decommits from a school and then winds up recommitting and signing. That is very rare. But in this particular recruitment, I actually think it's leaning more that's what's going to happen. I still think Texas is the pace setter, even though Bama people feel confident, Florida people feel semi-confident. I think Texas really still looks good because he sees so many advantages of playing at the University of Texas, not just from on the field, but we're talking about a kid who is very social media savvy. And when I say that, I mean he has multiple million followers on TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter. This guy will, as soon as he gets an NIL deal, he will instantly be able to generate revenue based off of his followership alone. He's a young, savvy businessman. He knows what he's doing when it comes to that. He understands being at Texas only emphasizes that, only maximizes his value. It's not the end-all be-all for his decision-making. It's obviously going to be comfort in the offense. But again, Evan's watching the same stuff that Brennan Thompson's watching. He's watching the same things that Malik Murphy's watching, and that some of these other top targets are watching. He's watching these guys put up 50, 60, 70 points a week. And let me tell you, that gets recruits' attention more than you can sell a recruit on the virtues of the future, of the vision of your program, but nothing is a bigger selling point than what those players do on Saturday. That's the proof in the pudding. And Evan Stewart is a guy that this recruitment's going to be, it's going to be a roller coaster. It already is, but it's going to continue to be one. He wants to wait until an All-American game towards the end of the year to make an announcement. I do know that he wants to probably commit during that early signing period and sign. So it's going to be fun to see how he handles that. But he's going to be in Dallas this week for Texas OU. He's going to be a host of the Longhorns. They're the home team, so they're allowed to do that. Anytime you can get Evan Stewart in front of the crowd, in front of the Texas fans, in front of the Texas team, I think that's a positive. And this is a recruitment. Like I said, guys, don't get too involved right now because it's gonna stretch. This is gonna be one that's probably gonna go the distance because that's Evan Stewart understands his leverage. He understands his value. He is a top-notch elite guy. He's the number one rated receiver by On3 Sports for a reason. And it's because he does a little bit of everything. And he's another Jeff Banks special. Jeff Banks, this is a guy that he has pinpointed from the start, and he's made it clear the Frisco Liberty receiver is definitely the most critical priority of this class, especially with receivers. And so Evan Stewart, if you're a Texas fan, just understand you're in it. You're squarely in the mix along with a handful of other schools, mainly out-of-state schools. You're squarely in it. As long as Texas stays the course, I think they have the best shot at landing him. And like I said, getting a recommitment from a kid is incredibly rare. But I think in this particular recruitment, Texas actually still is the leader. And I think they have the best shot at landing Evan at the end of the day.
Yeah, and Evan brings eyes with him, and very few recruits can bring their own crowd to a brand and benefit their growth as well. And of course, offensive line is crucial in this class, and it has been the past couple classes. So how are things progressing in the recruitment of top offensive guard Devon Campbell?
Let's start with Devon Campbell. You said the top offensive guard. He's number one in the country in his position, and for good reason. This dude is legit. And for a team and a program like Texas that really needs to beef up on the offensive line, they've got some nice pieces there, but they really need some more of those elite guys that are versatile. Devon Campbell's a guy that you could line up at guard or tackle in college. I feel like his futures in the NFL is going to be at guard, but he could play tackle if he needed to. He plays tackle for Bowie sometimes. And when he's feeling frisky, he plays defensive tackle on the other side. And nothing makes an offensive line happier than getting to get some snaps at defensive tackle. Texas I feel like they're still setting the pace here, but I do think other schools have kind of caught up a little bit. LSU is pushing, Alabama is pushing. OU really likes him. He had seen them a couple weeks ago, but he maintains he's going to have that final official visit. He wants to save that final official, and we feel like it's going to be Texas in early December, late November, early December to have that official. He's going to be at the Red River Shootout on Saturday. That's a positive for Texas, and even more of a plus would be them winning, because they're battling a guy they're going head to head with in a recruitment. And so I've seen some Red River Shootouts turn recruits. I believe it was 2002 or 2003 when they turned the recruitments of Rhett Bomar and Adrian Peterson, who were in the stadium that year that OU blew out Texas, and that ultimately swayed them to Norman, Oklahoma. So that could be another case here. Texas needs a good showing just to keep pace with Devon Campbell. They've done a great job. Kyle Flood has been outstanding in this recruitment. But this is another one that's going to go the distance. Devon knows exactly his value. He is in no hurry. And we'll know more about where he's at here after October, November, when he's seen the other schools like LSU and Alabama. We'll have a better idea. And if he does nail down that final official to Austin, that's the best scenario you can have as a Texas fan. I think Campbell's the cream of the crop, and there's a reason why Texas has put so much resource in prioritizing him.
And we need tackles, and left tackles in particular. But Oregon secured the commitment of two of our targets in Kelvin Banks and Cam Williams. And Cam will be at the game and Banks won't. What's the word on Texas pushing to flip both Banks and Cam?
Texas is absolutely trying to flip Kelvin Banks just because he committed to Oregon. That didn't deter this staff one bit. If anything, they ramped up their chances. Kelvin Banks is a ready-made offensive tackle. And you and I, we follow recruiting and we love it. And we see more guards than anywhere. But when you find a tackle, that's when you got something, because it seems like there's more premium on that offensive tackle position now, especially in the NFL and college. Kelvin still, he can be flipped. This is a guy that, now listen, when they went up to Oregon, that Oregon put together one of the best presentations you can do. And it's coming from a place that's really good at recruiting offensive linemen. This is coming from a place that has already set the standard for what NIL involvement comes to, because you see what they're doing with their players from the bat, and it's so much better than most every other program in the country. Texas is going to have to counter some of that. They're going to have to counter some of those efforts. If they can get him back on campus, and I feel like they can, they just have to be consistent. Both parents are fans of Texas. I know the mom is a fan of Texas, Miss Monica. And so if you could get them back on campus, I think you could get back in that conversation. You can get back in the running. And I don't think Texas is necessarily out of the running, but getting him back is going to be the key. You got to get him back around the coaches, around the players, and around other recruits. That's a big factor, especially with this class where your Derek Browns and your Connor Robertsons and those guys have been recruiting, and BJ Allen's, they've been recruiting a lot. And you need that. And for a Kelvin Banks to flip, I think you're going to need more of that. With Cam Williams, I had a chance to catch up with a couple of Duncanville coaches this week. They say he's still solid to Oregon. And if you ask Cam, he's going to tell you the same thing. But I think Cam is more flippable, to be honest with you. I think Cam, he's a different prospect than Banks, whereas Banks can come in and probably play pretty early. I think Cam is a guy that actually has more upside, because his athleticism at his size is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, if you see this kid 6'6", 350 pounds dunk a basketball, there's a reason schools are going after him. He's going to take some time to develop, but I think Texas has a shot to flip him as well. This game could be a big indicator. This game could be a big help. And if you had to tell me which one of Banks or Cam Williams doesn't make it all the way to Eugene, Oregon, Cam Williams would be my guess. If you could keep him closer to home, 2 hours from his house in Austin, Texas, I think that actually gives Texas a little bit more of a chance. But he's the same as Banks in regard that they need him back on campus in Austin. This game in Dallas could be a big help, especially if they put it on OU. That could be a big help. But once they get back into into playing home and homes, they need to get Cam back on campus. They need to get him there for a game. You get both of those guys back for a game in October, November, these recruitments get real. Until then, I think it's all conjecture and speculation. But to me, Cam Williams is a guy they have not given up on. There's too much upside, and there's too little of tackle prospects in state, not only for this class, but for the next class as well. And so they're at a premium right now, and Cam is one of those. And so a guy that has maybe as much potential as any of the other linemen just because of his athleticism and versatility. Texas is still on him well. He's solid to Oregon, but let him get a little taste of that Texas OU on Saturday, and he might be coming out with a different thirst.
And then what about the other Cam and Cam Dewberry? He won't be at the game either, but what's the word on him?
Cam Dewberry is another one that he's hard to get a read on because I feel like he doesn't really know where he's going to go yet. I knew early on going out of state seemed to be the pattern. I know he really liked Ohio State. I know he really liked Alabama. I know he was talking to OU and LSU as well. But since Texas, the move to the SEC had come up, that helps. Texas has really hammered away with his parents and with the coaching staff at Humboldt Atascocita. You've got some carryover from some older players there that came to Texas, namely like a Sam Cosme. So there's a little familiarity there. But Dewberry's one, I think he's just up in the air. I don't think Dewberry really knows where he's going right now. I think he's enjoying the process. He's having a great year. He's getting bigger. He's getting stronger. I think he's developing into a really, really good offensive tackle prospect with guard traits as well. That versatility, again, is going to help Cam as well. But getting him back on campus is going to be the big key. I'm not sure if he's coming for the October 16th game against Oklahoma State. I don't have a list in front of me. I'm not sure if he's doing that, but they're constantly talking back and forth. And there's been a couple instances where he was going to visit and he hasn't. And so those lines of communication are still solid. At the end of the day, Cam's kind of a wild card. And I think that goes for every staff. I don't think one staff has an up over him over any other ones. And so he's a little more wide open, which to me, you put more good film out on Saturdays, you get a better chance at landing a kid like a Cam Dewberry.
All right, cool. Let's hop over to defense. Jacoby Matthews is a top safety out of Louisiana and a big LSU target. Is Jacoby Matthews remaining open to the Longhorns pitch, or is he just coming to watch a fun game?
That's a great question. I think the first question is, how do we pronounce where he lives? Ponchachulada, Ponchachula. I've actually lived in Louisiana, and I still cannot pronounce where he's from. But make no mistake, it doesn't matter how you pronounce it. It's just how you make sure he gets to Austin, Texas. Jacoby Matthews is a big dude, man. He's a guy that I could envision as a hybrid linebacker at the next level. But they're recruiting at safety, and that's where he wants to play. He actually committed to LSU out of nowhere earlier this year. A few months later, decommitted, wanted to reassess where he was at. Texas never stopped recruiting him. They kept on him. They stayed strong and consistent. Now they're going to get him in town for a game and possibly getting him into Austin next weekend for the Oklahoma State game, which is going to be big. They want to add one more big safety in this class. And I know Harold Perkins is designated as the linebacker / safety because he's kind of got a hybrid position they're working out. But this is a guy that he's a big, strong headhunter. He's a big athlete. He does a lot of good things. He's a guy that could fill the alley. He tracks, he smacks. I love that Texas is staying on Jacoby Matthews. And he's a guy, if this class ends with a Jacoby Matthews, if you go into Louisiana and you take one of those LSU leans, you have done something.
All right, and that's it for the prospects coming to the Texas OU game. But also I wanted to catch up on the other big names real quick that the fans are curious about. First, top-ranked linebacker in Harold Perkins. Our uniqueness is that PK is pitching him his own creative position that's a hybrid linebacker safety type, and Perkins likes the sound of that. So what's the update on Harold Perkins?
If you would have asked me 6 months ago what Texas' chances were with Harold Perkins, I would have said slim to none. It looked like he was destined for the SEC, either Texas A&M or LSU. Texas turns around and gets an invite from the SEC, and that started the change of this recruitment. He'd always kind of liked Texas. Even in the spring, he liked Texas, but it just seemed to favor other schools, especially in the SEC. But now that's changed. And the fact that they've got him on campus the last few weeks, that's huge because he's now trending away from Texas A&M, which he was essentially leaning towards. LSU is still a major factor, and I think they're still going to be a factor till the end of this recruitment. But Texas has put themselves in a really good position with in my opinion, the best linebacker in the country. If you go watch him, he reminds me of a meaner Malik Jefferson. He's just that dominant. He's got an alpha male mentality. He's almost intimidating when you interview him. He realizes exactly who he is and how good he is. And he's confident. Watch him run the football. It kind of reminds me of Sergio Kindle when he was at Woodrow Wilson, when he would play running back and play linebacker, and they had to decide where he goes. Well, Perkins is pretty damn good running back too. Obviously, he's going to play linebacker safety, that created position that Coach PK is making for him. Hey, today, Texas looks really good for Harold Perkins, and that's something I couldn't say 6 months ago. They just have to stay the course, get him back on campus if at all possible for a few more games, and just continue to put together good performances on the field. Against TCU, the linebackers look pretty salty. When he sees DeMarvion Overshown making plays, his eyes light up. And so give Texas a ton of credit. Jeff Banks and Steve Sarkisian have made this guy feel the utmost importance, and that was only part of the reason of swaying him back into the Texas fold. I think the Horns look really good right now, but I think this one has a couple more months before it figures out.
And the final major target is another killer on defense in top corner Denver Harris. He's made a couple trips to Austin, which is good, but this seems like another saga recruitment that's going to have its ups and downs.
I think you nailed it. It's going to be a saga recruitment. I want to give Eric Nahlin a ton of credit. He's been all over this recruitment from the start. It's Texas, Alabama. I know LSU is waiting in the wings, but this is a Texas, Alabama recruitment. I think some days Denver wakes up and he thinks, I'm going to go play for Nick Saban, the best DB coach in the country. I'm going to go play for Alabama. And then I think he wakes up the next morning and thinks, you know what? Austin's only 2 hours from my house, and I got a lot of people there I like. I think Harold Perkins might join me. I'm talking to some of these other recruits. I think Texas might be the choice. And I think he goes back and forth like that all the time. It's probably not that simple, but Texas is squarely in this, and they've been in this. You just have to stay the course. You have to be consistent. With a lot of these elite prospects, it sometimes comes down to a process of elimination. Which schools are going to maintain that relationship the longest? You would think, well, all of them would keep calling, but they don't. They have to allocate that time to different places. Texas never wavered. Texas has stayed on their top corner prospect in the entire class. There's a reason. He's absolutely disgusting on the field. It's going to translate in college really easily. he's a guy with just, Texas is in it. They're in it. And the fact that he's been showing up to Austin, that bodes so well for the UT defense and for the potential to land this guy. And it's another reason I think Texas could finish with a top 3 class in the country, because of Denver Harris is a guy I think it's 50-50 right now. If you had to put, percentage on it, I bet Eric has a better idea of what those percentages are. But from my read, it's 50-50. He wakes up one morning, bam, and he wakes up Texas one morning, next morning it's Texas. So it may come down to how he wakes up on early signing day in December to where he's leaning. But just know that Texas, no matter what reports you read, and there's been some false stuff about Alabama and LSU being his only 2, that couldn't be further from the truth. Trust what Inside Texas is telling you. Texas is squarely in this. If they don't get him, he's going to Alabama. If they do, it's because they beat Nick Saban head to head.
And we are up to speed on all the major names thanks to you. I seriously always look forward to these because I learn just as much as the viewer. You're the man, Justin. Please let the viewers know where to find your excellent work.
I really appreciate you, Texas Homer. You do a tremendous job with these videos, and the production is top notch, man. We absolutely love it. I'm Justin Wells at Justin Wells 2424 on Twitter. You can find me at InsideTexas.com. I'm part of the best team in the Texas Longhorn market, joined by Eric Nalleen, Joe Cook, Ian Boyd, Hudson Standish, Jerry Hamilton, Bobby Burton, Paul Waddlington. I mean, our team, it's an army at Inside Texas, and I'm so blessed and fortunate to be working with these guys. I love talking recruiting. I love getting on here and rapping about it with you and catching up week to week, month to month. Find me at Justin Wells on Twitter, Justin Wells 2424. Until then, hook 'em.
And that's a wrap for Justin Wells. Go check out InsideTexas.com today to stay up to date on all the recruiting craziness. Watch more of my videos here. And please like, subscribe, and share if you'd like more quality Texas Longhorns content. As always, hook 'em.